Good afternoon, everyone. Well, it's pretty clear when you see the CVs of our panelists that old industries are bringing in fresh eyes to rejuvenate brands. Jim, I want to start with you. You're a Silicon Valley guy, a tech entrepreneur, a former CEO of a large search technology company, not the traditional CV of broadcasts where media veterans, even some finance types, ends up in the boardroom. So tell us what you're doing to spur digital change at CBS Interactive.
Yeah, well, for us, it was about realizing that the future was not obviously going to be about broadcast television, but understanding that the next 50 years, the TV would just be one platform of among all of them, mobile, your desktop, your television, and so our strategy has been to pursue a multi-platform future, realizing that we're a content company and we have to be delivered everywhere possible. And so we've spent the last 5 or 6 years, building all of that in-house technology and putting together new products like CBS All Access, which is our monthly subscription streaming service. And then doing all that, and again with a Silicon Valley background, we've now gotten to the point where we, the Silicon Valley guys, are making our own television shows. So the new Star Trek is, our best known example for that. So it's now kind of come full circle.
Nadja, your story is completely different. A family business that you've gone into, a 100-year-old business, and you had to modernize it from the start. I gather collaborations with big fashion names was part of the strategy.
Absolutely. It is a very big advantage to have the foundation of the heritage, yet the challenge is how do you break away while still maintaining your strong DNA. And we just felt in order to make ourselves relevant as a brand, we had to represent the voice of the customer, and that really we did via the collaboration with the various different designers.
Daniel, you're at the forefront of digital change in retail. I want to start with a quote from your corporate office. Return on investment is no longer measured by sales per square foot, but surprise and excitement per square foot. Tell us what you're up to.
Absolutely. That's our new store format. We call it the store of the future. Because end consumer, it's all about the end consumer, about you. And you cannot expect that they just come into the store when you do nothing. You have to excite them. You have to bring them into the stores. That makes it relevant to come. And I think the retail business today is just like selling some items in a store. And that's not enough anymore. You have to do a lot more. You have to engage with this end consumer. You have to give them a reason that they come to your store. And I think it's not only retail, it's actually also online, and that you have to combine, which makes it omni-channel. So it doesn't matter where the end consumer is buying your product, as long as they buy your product. And it should not matter where, online, offline, in wholesale, in retail, or in the e-com.
In the past, you've had a lot of physical merchandise, and that's not just in the stores and in department stores, but actually in your showroom. You've now created a digital showroom. Can you paint a picture for the audience as to what that looks like?
Yes. So when you go today in a fashionable showroom from a brand, you see on maybe 3 to 1,000 square meters, you see samples hanging next to each other in all the colors. And then as a buyer from a department store, from a store, you have to go through and you have to select what you would like to buy for next season. We have completely revolutionized that, and we actually haven't done any sample anymore. We took pictures, we put them into a digital showroom, so now all the buyers who come to our showroom, they're buying digitally. And we had, in the beginning, when we started, there was a lot of not everybody was trusting in it, because in the fashion industry you want to touch it. But we were convinced that the new generation, they are used to buy digital. And the new generation are become soon, anyway, the buyer of all these department stores. So it was for us clear that they know how to buy digitally. And you have some swatch books where you still can touch the garment. But it's completely, when you come to our showrooms, it's all digital. It's faster, you have a better overview, it's less expensive, because you don't have to do all these samples, and most importantly, it's more sustainable, because you don't have to fly in these samples anymore.
Nadja, do you want to talk to these trends as well, how that's changing your business?
Well, I have to say, my new role model, by the way, is Daniel. So cutting edge, so inspirational, and so amazing to see that the very modern way of thinking also has the total return on, or is showing the return on investment.
Thank you.
What I thought is very important that you mentioned is that nonetheless the samples, the fabric samples are still there. So despite the digitalization, I think there's still that human need for a tactile experience. And we're certainly trying to do that ourselves with global showrooms. And in terms of digital, even the stores, sometimes we do feel our product sells almost better if the customer can touch it versus the product being behind the screen. I think with technology and photography being so good nowadays, the visual transformation of the product onto the screen is so good with the 3D. And it's almost like that 3D saturation is almost as good enough as feeling the product tactilely.
Digital disruption binds the three of you together, but Jim, in your world, cord cutting has been a very dominant force for the networks to try and contend with. Since you've joined the business, you've launched 3 direct-to-consumer services, 24/7 digital news network, a sports network, and also a streaming entertainment network just in recent weeks. I know a number of the big networks are very slow to go down that streaming path because they're scared of cannibalizing some of the revenues. Why is there a mindset change now in 2018?
Well, it took a while. I mean, if you go back to when we first started proposing these ideas for these new online products, there was an existential threat, I think, felt by my colleagues on the linear side. But one thing that CBS did early on was put my group in charge of all of digital. So it's not, it's not owned by each individual group. We do all of digital, and so in that way, we've always been partners for all these different groups. So when we would go to them with crazy ideas, like taking, news is the best example, where we had Holly Williams on the ground in Syria risking her life every day for 1 minute of news. How could we take an online product and give her a canvas to report that news all day long? Major Garrett at the White House, those kinds of things. So really, they started to look at us as an opportunity to modernize their own divisions and their own content. So partnering, I think, was it. But really, it took what I would kind of call, we had to be patiently impatient, meaning we'd be patient and taking years to bring them over to what we were proposing, and impatient in the sense that we just had to keep pushing them. So.
Can I talk about speed then? Because 5G is coming soon, and it feels like when 5G does launch in a big way, the streaming really kicks into high gear, which means the networks need to be ready. How are you preparing for that change?
Well, the biggest trend in online, in my space right now, is actually the television. So a majority of our volume now comes back on the big screen, even for digital. These OTT devices, so an Apple TV, a Roku, Fire Stick, they're going through those boxes back to the television. So we're already seeing the need for better streaming, faster streaming, because people really are turning to us as the way that they're going to watch TV.
On demand is the media side, but instant consumption, instant gratification is your world, Daniel and Nadja. And perhaps you can both talk about this when consumers want the product quickly now, where before they were happy to see it on a catwalk, then in a magazine. Eventually it would find its way into a store.
Ladies first.
Absolutely. I have to say the entire concept also of Instagram shopping has been incredibly useful, and of course going straight into the website. But I come from a point of view from the jewelry industry. We don't necessarily have the fashion cycles, so we have actually a bit of an advantage. But definitely we're seeing that instant gratification scenario.
How do you service that? How do you make sure you protect your margins, get the volume out, and provide the customer with the quick experience they want?
I have to say, customer research in the first place is so important in order to put in the right orders, in order not to run out of stock when the customer buys. And I think also, we were talking about it earlier, just the local or regional supply offices are absolutely crucial to be able to supply faster, which also reduces the carbon footprint. So instead of global shipping, just to have that local, regional shipping.
Well, it comes again to the end consumer, and the end consumer wants to have everything fast. In the past, you saw a fashion show, and then 6 months later, we were delivering what they have seen in the fashion show. But there were some vertical brands, they actually came to the fashion shows, and they have copied that fashion shows, and they put it into their stores you know who am I talking about, they had it 6 weeks later. And we said, we have to stop that. So what we then put in place, we call it see now, buy now. So when you go on a fashion show from Tommy or you see a fashion show, immediately during that show, we're going to put everything online, what you see, and next day it's available in our stores. So this is what the end consumer wants, because he wants to have it immediately. It's a nightmare from a logistic and from an operational point of view, but that's the new world. That's how we have to adapt to that new world. And it's all about speed, it's all about innovation, and it's all about digitalization.
What's that doing to profitability at this point?
It's definitely lower than when you can put it into normal production. We still fine-tune and try to make it more profitable, but that doesn't matter. You cannot think in that moment about the profit. It's what the end consumer wants, and you have to give that immediately, and the rest you work in getting the experience and to optimize during the way. But you cannot wait until you have a profitable project. You have to start doing that now, because end consumers are not waiting.
What crops up regularly when you come to the big technology events across Europe is that there are multiple trends for business leaders to contend with, and that is AI, it's AR, it's VR, it's Internet of Things, it's 5G, it's holograms. How do you start to get ready for the future with some of these changes? I know in media it's early days, where some sporting networks have started to experiment with VR, for instance. How do you get the product right and get sort of mass market where it's even worth going down that track?
I'd say back to what he's saying, focusing on the consumer. So machine learning and AI we're already using for things like recommendations, for what shows to watch. It's actually affecting advertising and targeting, like from that perspective. And we have a big technology group. I have 2 CTOs, one for all of corporate and one for CBS Interactive. I'm in a very large technology group. So that's one side. VR, I just think, is early. I said this yesterday in my talk. I think it's inevitable that we're going to wind up in a Ready Player One, entertainment world, but it's going to take longer to get there than people realize.
Does anyone want to jump in on some of the trends that they're picking up on?
Yeah, no, we had some experimentation with VR, but I think we were perhaps too early. The resonance was very low, actually. And again, I personally take that back to the human phenomenon of wanting to have the tactile experience. If it helps the storytelling, then it's great, but I think people need to touch the product.
Which one of these trends is most relevant to your world, Daniel?
All of them at the same time, I must say.
That's the problem, isn't it?
Yes, and looking forward into the retail business, where is retail in 2030? I mentioned that this morning in my presentation. We're going to see a lot more of AI, and we're going to see also robots. I'm convinced that this is going to happen. But everything will help to make it more usable for the end consumer. And all the data that's coming in, it's only helping to do the business better and to serve the end consumer. And I think that should be also the purpose, not that you use this data for other things. It's only to satisfy the end consumer more. And when you look at data, this is the other jungle where you have to find the right way. And we learn a lot in Formula One. They have so many data they collect from a race, for the race, but also for the next race and for the race in a year. And there is a lot of industries that we look at. They are much advanced than our fashion industry, but we try to learn and implement into our business.
Jim, let's talk about the disruptors, because they're out there for your business in the form of Amazon, Netflix, Apple. And if you look at some of the subscription pricing, the cost of your subscription is priced lower than Netflix. $5.99, I think, or $9.99 without ads.
Right.
Is that right? Cheaper
Yes.
than the $10.99 for Netflix. You're meant to be the premium product at CBS. How come you're priced lower? And what's that doing to margins when you've got a business like Netflix, for instance, that's going after, I think the numbers were about another 100 million consumers it wants to add in India. You've got a volume business internationally competing against you domestically.
Yeah, we are mostly a US business right now. We license our shows internationally, both CBS and Showtime, which we also operate. Our prices were the same. They raised theirs, so most recently they were similar. And I always think it's funny to talk about this pricing. If you think about it, Netflix was 4 DVDs a month for $18.95. So I think these things have a ways to grow, probably, in what you offer. But again, back to being a Silicon Valley company, we think about this as a product, and our model is, it's like a freemium product the way you would think of Evernote or Spotify, where you can watch the last 5 shows for free. And we're part of a broadcast network, right, which is different than, we do billions of ad revenue a year. And so our model needs to fit into the larger picture of all the platforms we serve, all the way down to the premium product, which is the $9.99 a month for ad-free. And that's about 1/3 of our users so far. So there's probably room to grow that over time.
Nadja, in your world, Amazon last month filed a patent for a new jewelry line called The Keeps by Amazon. How fearful are you that the tech titan is eating the lunch of the jewelry industry after gathering a whole heap of information and analytics behind the scenes?
It's definitely putting on the pressure, but as they say, you should never really look at the competition, but look ahead at your vision and how you can just stay strong. I have to say we are in an amazing situation because we own the crystal manufacturing plant in Austria. We have our manufacturing plants for jewelry in India and in Thailand, so we can really control our processes and hopefully stay ahead of the game with good design, with amazing storytelling, great quality, a big emphasis on sustainability, which we hope are the values that our customers share with us.
Daniel, similar question to you, because Amazon's also going after clothing, and you've just dived on in there with Amazon. You have a bigger selection of Tommy on Amazon than a Macy's or JCPenney, according to numbers from Nomura. So effectively, you're putting a huge punt on Amazon. Aren't you worried that they turn around and take your data?
Well, you now mention Amazon. That's true in the States, but I would like to mention a much better example. That's Zalando in Europe. I think the way they go forward, and in a modern way with them, we exchange the data. And that's, I think, also the future. What I mentioned is data is the big thing. And it's no longer that we have to share data. For example, we went with Daimler Corporation. We do that because we want to try to find a way how we can share data. And I think we also work with Alibaba and all them, but I think the best job is Zalando in Europe. And they do it very open-minded. We test, we try to collaborate, not only on, for them, it's us. When they share the data with us, it helps us, and if we share the data with them, it helps them. And we try to implement this idea also in Amazon, and therefore, there's a lot to learn still, and a lot to do.
We've got 15 seconds left, so let's have one word each about the biggest challenge ahead for 2019. Jim, only one word.
One word. Well, the Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's going to be the biggest streaming event of all time for most concurrent users. So that's the one right up in my future that we have to deliver on and not screw up.
Nadja? Wow, that's amazing. Time to market.
Okay.
Time to market and being able to deliver the right amount of product at the right time.
Daniel?
For me, uncertainty in the world, the whole world is uncertain. In the business, I'm not so afraid because we continue to invest into speed, innovation, digitalization, stay open-minded and make the impossible possible.
Daniel, Nadja, Jim, thank you very much for joining us here at Web
Karen.
Summit.
Thank you.